Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be working on making a gravel patio that we can enjoy our fire pit sitting around the fire in our Adirondack chairs. So stick around, I'll show you guys how we do this. To make some room for the gravel patio, we're going to be moving our garden bed. We built this about 4 years ago, still holding up great. If you're interested in building one of these, I have a build video. You can check that out right here on the screen, as well as some build plans if you're interested. But we're going to clear this space out. We have a large garden now out in the field. We don't need this space for gardening, and we've got quite a few other garden beds around the yard. So we're going to carefully take this garden bed apart, rehome it to someone else, and then move all of this soil out of the way and level this out. Now we have a small section in here where we put in a gravel area around the garden bed so it's easy to keep it clear and not have to weed it constantly. And we used railroad ties to go around that. We're actually going to make it match this portion of the gravel patio already, but we need to expand it a little bit further because we're wanting to put several Adirondack chairs in here. They're going to take up a little bit more space. So I extended that out about 8 inches on each side, and then we're going to fill in the rest of the area with some railroad ties. And it's already pretty level here, so I don't have to do a ton of work with this. I'm just going to level out underneath each of the railroad ties so they don't move around at all, and it'll sit nice and level. I'll use my chainsaw to cut these to length. These railroad ties tend to dull your chainsaw, so I would just recommend using a dull chain to begin with, one that you don't care about too much. Don't pick your sharpest one, or else you'll need to resharpen it after cutting a few of these. These railroad ties weigh a lot and they're bulky, so if you have 2 people, you could easily carry these where you want them to go, but I'm just going to make it a little easier because it's just me working on this for now, so I'm going to drag it over with my tractor and put them in place. And even though these railroad ties are really heavy, and if you have the area leveled out, they're fairly stable, but over time they will shift and move, especially if you bump into them with your mower or different things. So I don't want this moving around. I don't have to touch it again. I want it to stay exactly where I want it. So in a bit, we're going to be fastening these together and then also staking them down to the ground so they're not going to move. But I want to make sure everything's laid out correctly and it all looks good before I start fastening them and staking them to the ground. Now that I got everything laid out where I want them to go, I'm going to start fastening the corners and seams together on these railroad ties. I'm going to be using some 8-inch screws to fasten those together and pull everything nice and tight. I'll also be countersinking the hole a bit just so that the screw head sits flat in there. I don't want them sticking out on the sides. This will make it a little bit less noticeable. So I'll tighten everything up and then I'll start staking it into the ground in just a bit. Now for the stakes, I'm cutting these at 2 feet long. They're 1/2-inch rebar, and I'm going to be using just a regular Sawzall blade to cut through this. A trick with rebar, you don't really have to cut all the way through. Once you get about halfway, you can bend it and it snaps off really easily. So that will just save a little bit of time and your blade from having to cut all the way through. So once I have all of those stakes cut to 2 foot long, I'm going to start pre-drilling some holes through the railroad ties so I can stake them to the ground. To drill out these holes, I'm going to be using a 1/2-inch drill bit, and just like with the chainsaw, I would recommend using a junk drill bit, one that you're not too attached to, because you could run into rocks and different things in these railroad ties and might mess up your drill bit. Next, I'll take a sledgehammer and hammer those spikes down into the ground to hold this in place, and I'm going to be putting one on each end of the full railroad ties and then one in the middle, and that holds really well. This won't be moving around at all. I'm just about finished with the last stake going into the ground, and now at this point my forearms are burning, so I'm very happy to move on to the next step. Next, I'll move on to spreading this clear 6mm plastic across the ground before adding in the gravel. I feel like the clear works a little bit better because you don't see it as much as the black plastic. So I went with the clear, but this is what we used 4 years ago in this other gravel section right here. And it held up great, and we didn't once have to weed that area. The grass never grew up through it. And we've actually used some landscape fabric before, and the weeds around here will just grow right through it, and the roots will literally just shred the fabric, and after a couple years they'll just be broken down and not do any good. So this plastic, in my opinion, works a lot better when you're trying to keep weeds out of a gravel area like this. Now we're going to move on to spreading out the gravel, and for this we're using the same material that we used previously, and that's slate chips. They were a lot dustier than I remember this time for some reason, but once it rains, it'll wash all of this off and it'll look really nice, so I'm not too worried about it, but it was just a little bit of a pain to spread that out with all that dust. Now, one last thing I need to do before this is finished up, I need to move one of these garden beds out of the way so we can put that double Adirondack chair there, and that shouldn't be a problem at all. I'll just need to patch the plastic underneath and then put the gravel over top, and you won't even know. Now, if you're interested in building some of these Adirondack chairs, I'm going to be putting together some build plans. I have a video already for building the chair as well as the double chair. If you're interested, we did that last year. You can go check that out. I'll leave the link right here on the screen as well as at the end of the video. Here's a quick look at the finished gravel patio. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. We really love how this turned out and look forward to using it. Alright guys, that just about finishes up the video for today. If you like this video, please hit that like button down below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos. Thanks so much for watching guys. I'll see you in the next one.